All right, so we're back and ready for more Marcus Aurelius, picking up where we left off in Meditations.
Oh, yeah, last time we were in book 8, right, with all that cosmic order and acceptance stuff. Pretty heady stuff.
Yeah, totally. But you know what I really love about book 9? It's like he switches gears completely. He's like, "Okay, enough with the big picture. Let's get down to brass tacks. How do we actually live this stuff out?"
Yeah, he definitely gets a lot more practical.
Yeah, totally. It's almost like Marcus Aurelius is giving us a philosophical to-do list, you know?
I love that, the philosophical to-do list. That's a good way to put it.
Right. So one of the first things that jumped out at me in this book was his emphasis on self-reflection. Like he's constantly telling us to examine myself, really get to know ourselves inside and out. It's kind of like a deep philosophical spring cleaning.
Yeah, he's big on that, isn't he? And it makes sense. In Stoicism, self-awareness is like the foundation.
Yeah, for sure. And that's where this whole ruling principle thing comes in.
Oh, yeah, the ruling principle. That's a big one.
Totally. So for anyone who's not familiar with this idea, it's basically like the force that guides our thoughts and actions. Marcus Aurelius says it's what determines how we make decisions, how we respond to challenges, and basically how we live our lives.
Right? It's like the CEO of our inner world.
Aha, yeah, exactly. But here's the thing. Sometimes I feel like my inner CEO is more like an intern who got promoted way too fast,
Yeah.
making all these questionable decisions, not really in control. What do you think makes for a strong and effective ruling principle? Especially in today's world with all the distractions and everything.
Oh, man, that is such a good question. And this is something that I think we all struggle with to some extent. Like finding that balance and making sure that our ruling principle is leading us in the right direction.
Totally. So for Marcus Aurelius, what does a healthy ruling principle look like? What are the qualities that make it effective?
Well, he talks a lot about virtue being the foundation of a strong ruling principle.
Okay, so it's not just about being efficient or organized or whatever. It's about making choices that are aligned with those core Stoic values like justice, wisdom, courage, and temperance.
Exactly. And that's where self-reflection comes in, because by examining our thoughts and our motivations and our reactions, we can start to see where our inner CEO might be going off track. And then we can start to make adjustments.
So it's like having a GPS for our souls, right? Guiding us towards those virtues.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
But okay, here's the other thing that really struck me about Book 9. Stoicism isn't just about contemplation, right? It's not enough to just sit around and think about being virtuous.
No, definitely not. Marcus Aurelius, he's all about action.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, all right, you've done your self-reflection, you've examined your ruling principle, now get out there and live it.
Totally. And he's very clear that our actions should flow directly from that strong, virtuous ruling principle we've been talking about.
So it's not enough to just think about being courageous or just or whatever. We have to actually act on those values in our daily lives.
Yeah, exactly. That's where this idea of purpose-driven action comes in. Marcus Aurelius stresses the importance of intentionality. Like, every action we take should have a purpose, and it should be aligned with those Stoic principles.
Otherwise, we risk getting caught up in what he calls frivolous activities, or as I like to think of it, running on that philosophical hamster wheel. Like we're busy, 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 but are we actually accomplishing anything meaningful? Are we moving towards a virtuous life?
Right, and that's something I definitely struggle with, too. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and just go through the motions.
Oh, tell me about it. There's so many distractions these days. It's like a constant battle for our attention.
Right? And, Marcus Aurelius was writing about this almost 2,000 years ago, but it feels so incredibly relevant today.
Oh, absolutely. So how do we stay focused on what really matters, in the midst of all this noise and chaos?
Well, Marcus Aurelius actually gives us some really helpful advice. He uses this analogy of a skilled craftsman.
Oh, yeah, the craftsman. That's a good one.
It is. He says that just as a craftsman approaches their work with intention and purpose, carefully shaping each element, we should approach our lives with that same level of care.
It's like we're all artists in a way, crafting the masterpiece of our own lives.
Exactly. And that means being mindful of how we spend our time and energy, asking ourselves, is this action contributing to the life I want to create, or is it just another distraction?
I love that. Makes you really think about those choices we make every day.
It does. And it leads to another key point that Marcus Aurelius makes about avoiding those pointless activities, the things that don't actually contribute to a virtuous life.
Yeah, he's almost ruthless about it, isn't he? Like life is too short to waste on things that don't truly matter.
Absolutely. And this is where he gets into that whole Stoic idea that external things can't really harm us. It's like he says, it is not right to vex ourselves at things, for they touch not the soul.
Oh, yeah, that's a powerful quote.
Nor have they admission to the soul, neither can they move or direct it, but only opinions themselves, which are in ourselves.
Wow, yeah, that's a good one. It's a reminder that it's not the events themselves that upset us, but our judgments about them.
Right. It's all about managing our inner world, not letting those external circumstances control our emotions.
So it's like we have this power, to choose how we respond to things.
Exactly. And that's a really empowering idea, I think. Like, even when things are tough, we still have that choice. We can choose to react in a way that's aligned with our values.
Hmm. That's a great place to leave it for now. I think we've covered a lot of ground already.
We have, and there's still so much more to explore in Book 9.
Definitely. We'll dive back into it in the next part of this deep dive. It's like he's saying, hey, you have this incredible power within you, to shape your own experience and rise above those external circumstances. But then that kind of brings up another question. If we're not letting external stuff dictate our emotions, what should be guiding us? What's the ultimate goal?
Well, you're hitting on the core of Stoic philosophy there. It all comes down to virtue. That's the North Star, the ultimate aim.
Virtue, huh? Interesting. I don't know. When I hear that word, I kind of think of like those old school morality plays. Like it feels a little outdated, but I think Marcus Aurelius is talking about something much deeper, right?
Oh, absolutely. For him, virtue isn't about following a rigid set of rules or anything like that. It's about living in accordance with nature and reason. It's about aligning our actions with our understanding of the universe and our place in it.
That makes sense. He actually has this one quote where he really lays it all out. He says, if thou findest in human life anything better than justice, truth, temperance, fortitude, and in a word, anything better than thy own mind, self-satisfaction, when it is regulated according to the true nature of rationality and content with the common fortune, if I say thou canst find anything better than this, turn to it with all thy soul, and enjoy that which thou hast found to be the best.
Wow, yeah, it's a long one. But it's so good. He's basically saying, look, if you find something more fulfilling than living a virtuous life, go for it. But I'm betting you won't.
It's almost like a challenge, isn't it?
It is, and it just shows how important virtue is to this whole Stoic philosophy. Like, he really believed that aligning ourselves with virtue leads to true happiness and fulfillment.
Okay, so virtue is the goal, but he doesn't just leave us hanging there, right? He actually gives us some concrete ways to cultivate these virtues. And what really stood out to me was his emphasis on specific virtues like justice, truth, temperance, and fortitude. It's like he's giving us a toolkit, for building that strong, virtuous character.
You're right. He doesn't just give us vague platitudes. He gets specific. And I think that's one of the things that makes meditation so relevant even today. It's not just a philosophy book, it's a practical guide to living a better life.
Okay, so how do we actually put this into practice? How do we cultivate these virtues in a way that feels authentic and relevant to our lives today?
Well, one technique that Marcus Aurelius emphasizes is daily self-examination.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He talks about that a lot.
Yeah, he really believes in it. He suggests taking some time each day to reflect on our actions, our thoughts, or motivations, like a daily check-in with our inner CEO.
Right. It's so easy to just go through life on autopilot, But he's saying, no, be more intentional, be more mindful of how you're living.
Exactly. And this daily self-reflection can help us to see where we might be falling short, where our actions aren't aligning with our values. It's about holding ourselves accountable. But it's also about recognizing our progress and celebrating the small victories.
Oh, I like that. It's not about beating ourselves up for our mistakes. It's about acknowledging them, learning from them, and then figuring out how we can do better next time.
Exactly. And it's important to remember this isn't about achieving some kind of perfect Stoic sainthood or anything.
Yeah, no one's perfect.
Right. It's a process. It's a journey of continuous improvement.
You know what it reminds me of? It's like training for a marathon. You don't just wake up one day and run 26 miles. It takes consistent effort, dedication, and a willingness to push through those inevitable moments of discomfort.
Oh, that is such a good analogy. And just like with marathon training, there will be setbacks, right? There will be moments where we stumble or fall short. The key is to not get discouraged, to keep moving forward, to keep striving towards that goal of living a virtuous life.
And he even talks about that, right? About how we shouldn't get too hung up on perfection.
He does. And that's something that I find really comforting, actually, because it's so easy to get caught up in this all-or-nothing mentality. But Marcus Aurelius reminds us that progress, not perfection, is what matters.
So it's okay to mess up, to make mistakes, as long as we learn from them and keep moving in the right direction.
Exactly. He's encouraging us to embrace the journey, to recognize that we're all works in progress.
There's something really liberating about that, isn't there? It kind of takes the pressure off. It allows us to approach this whole self-improvement thing with more curiosity and compassion, I think.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about Marcus Aurelius' philosophy. It's not about rigid dogma or unattainable ideals. It's about a practical, down-to-earth approach to becoming the best versions of ourselves.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the most powerful tools that he gives us is this idea of consciously choosing our responses. of not letting external events dictate our emotions. He has this amazing line where he says, "In the morning, when thou risest and unwillingly consider this, I am rising to the work of a human being. Why then am I dissatisfied if I am going to do the things for which I was brought into the world? Was I made for this to lie in bedclothes and keep myself warm?"
Oh, man. It's like a slap in the face, isn't it? But in a good way.
Ha ha, right. It's like a wake-up call.
It is. He's reminding us that we have a choice. We can choose to embrace the challenges of life, to see them as opportunities for growth and learning.
It's about approaching each day with intention, with a sense of purpose.
Exactly. And I think this is where those specific virtues that he mentions come into play. You know, justice, truth, temperance, fortitude.
Yeah, those are the big ones, right?
They are. By focusing on cultivating those virtues, we're essentially building a framework for making decisions, for navigating those inevitable challenges that life throws at us.
It's like having a set of guiding principles, a moral compass that helps us to stay on course even when things get tough.
And it's not just about reacting to external events either. It's about proactively shaping our character, about becoming the kind of people who embody those virtues in every aspect of our
It's
lives.
about walking the walk, living a life that reflects those values.
Precisely. And that, I think, is the essence of what Marcus Aurelius is trying to convey in Book 9. It's a call to action, an invitation to move beyond theory and embrace the practical application of Stoic principles in our daily lives.
It's about taking those principles out of the textbooks and actually integrating them into our thoughts, our actions, our interactions with the world. It's about embodying that Stoic ideal of living in accordance with nature and reason.
And that is a powerful message. It's a reminder that we have the power to shape our own lives, to create meaning and purpose, even in the midst of chaos and uncertainty.
So how do we do that? What are some tangible steps that we can take to make these principles a reality in our own life? That's what I'm curious about. It's like he gives us this incredible toolbox, but then maybe we're a little intimidated to actually open it up and use it.
I know what you mean. It can feel overwhelming, like, okay, I get the theory, but how do I actually put this into practice in my everyday life?
Exactly. So where do we even begin? Like, what's a good first step for someone who's new to this whole Stoicism thing and wants to, actually start doing it?
Well, I think it goes back to that daily self-examination practice that we were talking about earlier. Remember, Marcus Aurelius really stressed the importance of that. It wasn't just some random suggestion.
Right. So it's like making a commitment to check in with ourselves on a regular basis, almost like a mental hygiene routine.
Yeah, I love that. Mental hygiene. That's a great way to put it. So yeah, taking a few minutes each day to reflect, maybe in the morning, maybe at night. Just ask yourself some questions like, did I live up to my values today? Where did I fall short? What could I have done differently? And most importantly, what can I learn from this experience? How can I grow from it?
Yeah, so it's like having a little Stoic coach in our back pocket, always there to give us a nudge in the right direction. But it's not just about reflecting on the past, right? It's also about setting an intention for the day ahead.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where those specific virtues that Marcus Aurelius talks about come in. Justice, truth, temperance, fortitude. Like before you can get out of bed, you could just take a moment to remind yourself of those virtues and think about how you can bring them into your day. Like, how can I act justly today? How can I embody truthfulness in my interactions?
It's like choosing a guiding principle for the day. Operation Get Virtuous.
Aha, I love it.
But life doesn't always go according to plan. So what happens when things get tough, when we're facing those inevitable challenges and setbacks?
Well, that's where Stoicism really shines, I think. Remember, it's not about avoiding those difficult emotions. It's about learning how to manage them, how to respond to them in a way that's aligned with our values.
Right, and Marcus Aurelius reminds us over and over again that it's not the external events themselves that disturb our peace. It's our judgments and reactions to them.
Exactly. So when that frustrating thing happens, and we have a choice, we can either get swept away by anger or frustration or resentment, or we can pause, take a breath, and ask ourselves, is this reaction helpful? Is it aligned with my values? Is there a more stoic way to respond?
That's the real challenge, isn't it? To choose that stoic response even when it's hard.
It is, and I think that's where the virtue of fortitude comes in. It's about cultivating that inner resilience, that strength of character that allows us to face adversity with courage and grace.
So it's not about pretending that everything's fine or suppressing those difficult emotions. It's about acknowledging them, processing them, and then choosing a course of action that's aligned with our values.
Exactly, and I think it's important to remember that this is an ongoing practice. Like, there's no finish line. There's no point where we suddenly become perfect Stoics.
Oh yeah, no one's perfect.
Right. It's about those small incremental changes that we make day after day and celebrating the small victories along the way.
So it's not about beating ourselves up when we mess up. It's about seeing those stumbles as opportunities for learning and growth.
Yeah, I love that. It's about embracing the journey, knowing that we have the power within us to become more virtuous, more resilient, more aligned with those Stoic ideals.
And it all starts with that commitment to self-reflection, to examining our thoughts and our actions, and to consciously choosing a more stoic way of being in the world.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Book 9 of Meditations, we'll leave you with this question. What will you do today, right now, to put these principles into action in your own life? What small step can you take to move a little closer to that Stoic ideal? Think about that. And until next time, keep diving deep.
Absolutely. And remember, you have the power to choose virtue, to shape your own experience, and to create a life that truly reflects those timeless Stoic values. We'll see you next time.